Almost daily, I see somebody question where to begin to do a C2C Graphgan. I decided to make these videos to go through the process in hopes that it'll help somebody else. Your first task is choosing your graph. I will list my Pinterest board in the comments below, where I have near 700 graphs. Most of them are suitable for a C2C Graphgan. The main things you're going to look for are not too many colors, because remember, you're going to have to create a bobbin and weave in all the ends based on the number of colors in the graph you choose. Also, you're going to want to make a swatch with the yarn that you plan to use for your Graphgan and the hook size that you plan to use. This will tell you about how large each block will be, because each square on the graph represents one block on your finished Afghan. Now, if your graph is 30 squares wide by 40 squares tall, and each of your sections in your C2C is about an inch, that means your finished Afghan is going to be about 30 inches by 40 inches. I have chosen this Nutella graph as that is one of my son's favorite things, and I decided it would be a cute one for him. Some things to look for are perler patterns, simple cross stitch graphs, knitting patterns, whatever would create not too many colors and not too large of a graph. You don't want something 1,000 squares wide, because although the detail might be great, there's no way you could translate that into actual yarn bobbins unless you want to be weaving in ends for the next 20 years. So I've chosen this graph here, and then I've got some graph paper and some colored pencils that represent each of the colors in here. And you'll see that I'm going to transfer that perler pattern to this graph paper as the first step to begin my C2C. We'll be right back after I'm done doing that. Okay, I have the image transferred to my graph paper. My actual image was 29 wide by 37 high. I decided to put 2 on each furthest limit of the image to make it a perfect rectangle. That's going to give me a finished image of 33 wide by 41 high. You're going to want to determine the center of your image. In this case, for me, it was the center 2 blocks of the lid of the jar. I placed those in the center of the graph paper to make sure I would have enough blocks. I've also created a key. It took me 10 colors to create the image. Each one is going to have a letter to represent it with the color name, then a block showing the actual color. Okay, so what is the best part of crochet? The fact that it is calming when you are actually doing it. So to make the actual creation of your Graphgan as simple to do when you actually begin is to transfer your graph into a written pattern. You'll see here that I always begin in this lower right corner, and since a C2C is done from corner to corner, you're going to create your written graph starting in the lower right hand corner. The arrows show you the way in which you read the graph. For example, this is another tip I have. Using a clear ruler, you're going to put it edge to edge on each block as you go through. As you proceed up the rows, you can see through, and you can mark off the row after you've transferred it. What I mean by that is, for example, our first row here is going to be 1 square of gray. So I'm going to come over to my paper, and row 1 is 1 gray. and I'm using the key that I've created up here. And now that I've written that down, I've marked the row off. Now I'm going to transfer to the next row. Row 1 up, row 2 down. So row 2 is 1, 2 grays. Go back to here. Row 2, 2 gray. Now we're going to go up to row 3. Row 3 is red in the direction of the arrows. Up this time. And you'll see we have 3 grays. So I write that. Row 3, 3 gray. 4. Red down. And that is 4 grays. Row 5, 3, 4, 5 grays. Now we're going to row 6. And on row 6 we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 gray. So we write 6th row is 6 gray. Now we're at the first row that's going to require a color change. As you see, I slide my ruler up. This row is red in the direction of the arrows, and as you transfer your graph to written, I suggest that you draw those arrows so you don't get confused. Your 7th row is going to consist of 1, 2, 3, 4 grays, 1 dark brown, and 2 grays. 4 gray, 1 dark brown, and 2 gray. Row 8. We're going to come over to here and slide our ruler up. Since this row 7 was red from bottom to top, row 8 is going to come back down. Row 8 is going to have 2 gray, 2 dark brown, and 4 gray. So we'll transfer that to written. 2 gray, 2 dark brown, 4 gray. You're going to continue, and then after I chart the row, I'm going to draw a line with an arrow in the direction that I followed so I do not get confused. You're going to want to double check every row, because once you're done with this, you're going to have a beautiful written pattern that's going to allow you to create a Graphgan, which at times can seem very daunting, in a very simple way. I'm going to complete changing my graph into the written pattern, and then I will come back. Now, of course, you could always just follow this graph and color in your squares as you complete it, as opposed to changing it to this. But I find the more organized you are, and if you take the time to do this, you are way less likely to make mistakes, and creating the Graphgan is way more enjoyable. Okay, I'm at the point now where I have gone through every row diagonally on my graph, transferring that into a row by row pattern for the Graphgan. Some things to note is that every odd row is going to be worked from the bottom up. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And every even row is going to be worked from the top down. 2, 4, 6, 8, etc. I have also noted where my Graphgan rows require increasing, where I'm going to require to maintain the block count and then when I'm going to begin decreasing. My entire project is going to have 73 rows. Rows 1 through 33 will be increase rows. Rows 34 through 41 will be maintaining rows. And rows 42 through 73 will be decreasing rows. As another way to double check that I have transferred my pattern correctly, after charting every row to Word, I do a count of the blocks to make sure that it matches up. You'll notice 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and so on. Then when I get to row 34, you'll notice I have 33 blocks, and then 35 also requires 33 blocks, all the way down through row 41. Then you'll notice at row 42, I'm going to begin decreasing. And that will take me to the end, all the way to 73. Now, that will also help in minimizing mistakes and making sure that when you make the actual project, that it's as fun as possible. I am going to begin creating my pattern. I'm going to work rows 1 through 6, which are all gray, and then I am going to come back and demonstrate row 7 so you can see how a color change should be done. Okay, I have completed the first 6 rows, all of which required just gray. I am now on my 7th row that is asking me to do 4 gray, 1 dark brown, and 2 gray. So you do not have a million ends to weave in, and the front of your Graphgan looks the same as the back. What you're going to want to do is create bobbins. Then, as each color is accessed as you create, you'll just tap from the bobbin as opposed to cutting and starting your yarn every time for neat edges or carrying over, which would leave ucky edges. These are nothing more than jumbo clothespins. They were 4 for $1 at the dollar store. I've seen a lot of ideas for bobbins, but I think these work nice because as your Afghan progresses, you can actually clip these on, because one of the main, kind of fussy things about these is keeping your bobbin straight or your yarn straight as you progress. So this is a nice option. How much yarn do you put on them? I don't know. However much you think you can fit without having it start falling off. And for sure by doing this, you're saving a lot of ends, and so this is a much better option. So since my pattern wants me to do 4 gray, 1 dark brown, and 2 gray, I'm going to do that. Give myself some yarn here. Now again, on the end, we are going to chain just 5. Turn my work. Then I will be double crocheting in the 3rd chain from the hook. This is an increase still. And then doubling in the last 2. Okay. Now we're going to slip stitch over to that block. Chain 2, again keeping our blocks nice and tight, and 3 more doubles in the space. Slip to the next box, chain 2, 3 doubles, slip to the next box. Now this is our 4th box. 1, 2, 3, about to create our 4th block, and the block after is going to require a color change. So you will do your color change for your new block on the slip stitch as you go. So let's complete this 4th block, chaining 2, 2 doubles in the space, Sorry, 3 doubles in that space. Now you're going to slip like you're going to our next block, but remember we want it to be dark brown as our pattern states. So I am going to take my new color, lay it over the end of my hook, and complete my slip stitch with my new color. So now I am working with my brown, and I'm going to create my block with the dark brown, chaining 2, and here you can lay your tail next to that stitch you're working and cover over it and do the other 3 double crochets, remembering that our next block wants us to return back to gray. The last 2 will be gray. So here I'm going to drop that brown, and I'm going to start a new gray bobbin because both the left and right sides of the afghan will have gray, so it's going to require 2 gray bobbins. I'm going to just lay that yarn over the hook, or actually, excuse me, I'm going to insert it into the next space, then lay the yarn over the hook and perform that slip stitch with the new color, being sure to pull all those strands down tightly so that's a nice neat change. Okay, chaining 2. Again, you can work over that tail. You will want to take the time to use a tapestry needle and weave those ends in. I just do not feel that crocheting over the ends for a few stitches is enough. You do not want to spend all this time making an afghan and have those ends work themselves out. So we are going to have the 3 more doubles. Slipping to the last one. 2 chains and 3 double crochets. Okay, so what you'll see here is that we have our first row of color changes done. Our pattern wanted us to go 4 gray, 1 dark brown, 2 gray, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4 gray, 1 dark brown, 2 gray. With nice neat color changes, you'll notice that on the front and the back, once we weave in our ends, it's going to look nice and neat. There's no carrying over of yarns or anything like that. Okay, we will do the next row. We are on to row 8, which is wanting 2 gray, 2 dark brown, and 4 gray. Again, an increasing row. So we're going to take that bobbin, which will be sitting here waiting for us, and we're going to begin our new 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, turning. I like to keep all my strands to the back for the working yarn. So before you begin, you'll want to take those, before you begin the row, take those and put those towards the back. That way they'll be accessible when you're ready to use them in the current row. Okay, so we're going to double in our 3rd from the hook and the next 2 as well. Okay, again the pattern wants 2 rows of gray. So we're going to slip here. Okay, here's the completed Graphgan. I wanted to make a few notes. First, when you're increasing along the beginning here and ending up there, you will increase on both sides till you achieve your required width. In this case, for me, that was 33 blocks. Then, to make a rectangular shape, you will maintain that 33 blocks by decreasing on one side and increasing on the other. All your decreases will occur on the same side, all your increases will occur on the same side as you turn your work. That will maintain a rectangular shape. Then when you've created the number of rows that require 33, in my case, across, you're going to begin to decrease. And when you decrease back down, you decrease on each side evenly till you end up with your opposite point. Here in my lettering, there were a lot of color changes. And when you make a lot of color changes, the blocks can be seemingly not very secure. So what you'll want to do is take your ends, and as you weave those ends in, making sure you leave them a good 6 inches long, you can really rectify a lot of that looseness by using your ends to secure those blocks and clean up the edges. And you will be sure that you will only weave a color end into the exact same color box. For example, a red end will only be woven into a red block. A black will only be woven into a black. And you'll want to go back and forth a number of times. I like to go up the stitch, down the stitch, left and right. That way, no matter how many times or what direction somebody pulls the finished Afghan, you're going to have a less chance of those ends weaving themselves out. Now this is only about a panel size here. I'm estimating we're about 3 feet by about 2.5 feet. I am going to create a border to bring this more of a throw size. You can do just a simple granny square style border, double crochets around in rows, making sure to increase at your corners so you don't buckle, single crochets, half doubles, whatever you want to do for your border. But this is the finished Graphgan, and I think it turned out pretty good. Thank you.